Hey friends, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today I have a wonderful tutorial for you. This is a tutorial for a jelly roll tea towel. Now we're doing it in Christmas fabric, so this is a great thing to make for yourself, to decorate your kitchen for the holidays, or they are super easy and fun to make, so you can make several and give them as holiday gifts. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. All right, so what we're making today is a type of quilt as you go towel. We are going to use just a cotton flour sack tea towel for the foundation. And we are going to be putting strips of it, and we are going to be kind of quilting as we go to make this. And so here's one that I have made. Now, before I start telling you about this one, my sister, Kathy, she is the one who thought of this, and I was admiring hers at her house. She had some pretty jelly rolls and had made little towels with tea towels with them. And I was thinking, oh, that's really cute. That's a good idea. And I invited her to come on and show us how she made them, but she declined, a bit camera shy. But I told her I was going to steal the idea, but give her credit and put them on my YouTube channel. So these are my sister's ideas, and I may have changed something up a bit because I just was looking at hers. I didn't actually see her making them, but here is my take on what she made. So first of all, you're going to need a jelly roll or 2.5-inch strips. You can cut your own, and I'm going to be cutting my own today. This is the one I made first, and I was using up leftover jelly roll strips from Dawn on the Prairie, that fabric line, and I thought it came out real cute. It's kind of fallish, and it makes a really pretty towel. Now, I have not been using this towel to dry dishes with and wipe hands with. You know, she was using hers for that. I just can't bring myself to do that to this pretty fabric. But I am using it to cover my breads when they're rising, or to cover stuff that I have in a basket if I'm taking it somewhere, because it's lightweight. It's a lot thinner than a quilt top, and it's prettier than a regular towel. If I have baked goods that are sitting out on the counter and I need to leave them out for the evening, I'll throw this over them and let them stay underneath this. But that's how I'm using mine. And maybe after it gets a little older, we'll start using it as a hand towel or a dish drying towel too, because it certainly will work perfectly for that. All 100% cotton, but just really pretty fabrics. And so this tea towel that I used for this one is a larger one. I know they come in different sizes. I think I had bought this online with a set of them from some fabric company, and I'm not sure which one, but it's more of a square. And then when I looked at the tea towels that I have on hand from Walmart, because you can buy like 4 or 5 or something in a pack at Walmart for very little, it's more of a rectangle. And so today we're going to be using this one, and we're going to be making a tea towel out of this one. It's not quite as big. So first of all, when you take your tea towel, if you want to know how many 2.5-inch strips, or about how many 2.5-inch strips you're going to need, you can take and you can measure the distance from corner to corner. Just cut diagonally. Oh, and I did mine on the diagonal. I don't know if she just went along her edges and went parallel like this, but I thought it would look really nice on the diagonal, so that's how I did mine. It would be easier to do it cross like this, because all of your pieces would need to be the same length, but This worked out just fine. It's not hard to do this way. So we're going to do another one on the diagonal. I like the way that looks. I'm also not sure how she finished off her edges, but I just used a binding on mine. Again, I saw it and I should have looked a little closer and looked to see how she did hers. So let me put this one aside for just right now. And let's measure from corner to corner our tea towel so we can kind of get an idea of how many strips we're going to need. And this is just a rough estimate. So this is 24 inches long. So there we have, go in just a little bit, 24 right there. And then 17, so it looks like we have 24 plus 17, 41 inches. And usually your jelly roll strips or the width of fabric is at least 42 inches. And usually you can probably get just a little bit more out of it. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be cutting 2-inch strips. Now you don't have to have them 2-inch strips. In fact, you can make it more interesting by varying the thickness of each strip. But if you want to use a jelly roll, just go ahead and just take the strips you're going to need. So since the distance between this corner and this corner is 42, if we divide that in by 2, which will be the width of our finished strips, we will get 21 strips. So it's going to have 21 strips going across. That doesn't mean we're going to need 21 full length of fabric strips. In fact, when I made this one right here, it worked out perfectly that I was able to, let's see, here's the center right here. And so I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I used 6 fabrics this way. And then I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fabrics this way. So there were 11 strips. And then I was able to just finish off the ends with what was left of those strips. So that worked out very well. So you're looking at maybe 11, 12 strips altogether. For this size, it's probably going to be smaller or smaller amount for the other size. We'll just see what happens. So just to kind of have in your head that you're going to need 11 or 12 2.5-inch strips of fabric. So what we're going to do, let's just go ahead and fold this back up and put it aside. We are going to take some fabric, and since it's getting close to Christmas and I would like to have holiday stuff in my kitchen, I have chosen a line of fabric that is Christmassy and very vintage. It's QT Fabrics. I don't know what the line is. Let's see if I have a name of the line. I'm thinking it was Christmas. Let's see. Oh, I can't even remember. If I think of it. It was something Christmas, and I can't remember. I had found this fabric at when we were in Paducah at Hancock's of Paducah, and I really liked it, and I was wanting to have something to go along with it, and so I went to Etsy and I just kind of searched vintage Christmas fabric, and this popped up, and and I found this one, and it's all part of this group. So this one's really pretty. It has, of course, this one right here has the Santa Clauses, the snowmen, all the vintage cards, pictures of Santa on a sled. This is a really cute one. Deer, the nutcrackers, very pretty. It just reminds me of vintage Christmases from long ago. And then this had the snow globes of all different kinds with kind of a deep burgundy red background. And then the little Santa faces. and the nutcrackers and the stockings. Then a snow globe, which is the same as this one, only it has the blue background with like the snowflakes in the background. Vintage glass ornaments. This is so pretty. Vintage glass ornaments. This is actually a really dark green. Dark green. And this one has the cream, vintage cream background. And then these little postage stamps with snowmen on them. Really cute. And then finally, the last one I got with this collection was the little snowmen nutcrackers stockings with the green background. That would be the same as the one I had with the dark red background. So I've got some really pretty colors here. So I thought this would make a really pretty towel. And so I'm going to cut 2.5-inch strips off of each one of them. And so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fabrics here. And then another one here. So I have 8 different fabrics. So some of them I will cut more than one of, and that will be great. So all you do to cut your fabric, and we can do more than one at a time. I think to be safe, let's just do 2 at a time because we don't want to. And again, it doesn't have to be exact. This is not any fancy sewing where you have to meet points and corners and all of that. So what we're going to do, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and do 3. My blade should be sharp still. I just love it when I change my blade and it cuts so easily. All right, so I've just lined them up on this side, and this side's not straight yet because I need to even it out and make it nice and straight. But you do need to make sure your fold down here at the bottom are all the same. That's important. Make sure they're all the same. Okay, now since I'm right-handed, I'm going to flip this over. And I'm going to trim off just a little bit so that I've got a straight line through all the fabrics. I need to make sure I get all the fabrics in this line. So what I'm going to do, get you so you can see here, I'm going to find a line on my ruler. I'm going to line it up with that fold. And when I do that, you're going to see that I have just a little sliver that comes off and goes all the way to the top. And I think all of them are going to be enclosed in that. So let me see. I need to scooch you just a little bit here so that you can see the whole mat. There we go. We can see the top and the bottom now. So I'm going to line up my ruler and take a line on my ruler and put it on that fold. Make sure it's right on that fold. Then I'm going to put it as close to this edge that I can, but still get all the layers of fabric. Okay, so if there was one that was shorter, you need to make sure you're trimming on that fabric as well. Then we're going to cut. And you'd want to have a nice sharp rotary cutter if you're going to go through these 3 fabrics because there's 6 layers. And so I've got all of them nice and trimmed evenly. I'm going to carefully flip it over, and now I'm going to cut a 2.5-inch strip. Now, if you have a jelly roll, you don't have to do any of this. You just take your jelly rolls and get started. But I did not have a Christmas jelly roll, so we have to cut our own. So there I've got 2.5 inches, and I've got it straight on that line. This should still be straight with the fold, and it is. So we're going to cut. And I'm going to set this right here aside. get 3 more. All right, so we're back over here by my sewing machine, and I had just taken my tea towel and I folded it in half, corner to corner. And since this is a rectangle, the corner, the bottom corner isn't going to meet. So I just did this and just made sure, so the bottom looked like that. Just made sure I had a nice straight line from corner to corner. And I pressed that line. Now that is going to be the line that we'll follow, so our strips are going to be straight. And so again, we're doing our strips on the diagonal. You could go and do a fold right down the middle and just have all of yours going this way. That's fine too. I just think it looks cool on the diagonal. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 fabrics, whichever 2 you want to start with. And I'm going to start with the Santa one and this red one. And we're going to put them right sides together. And we're going to lay them right on that line. Now we want to make sure that we've gone past this corner so that our seam or our selvage isn't showing at the end. Okay. So I kind of have a limited space here, but we'll manage. So I'm going to put pins right so that they're right on that, just lined up on that line. And that just gives us a straight line so that our strips aren't going to be wonky. All right, so I've got this all pinned. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from this pinned line. And then I am going to press it back, and I'll show you that when I bring you back. Okay, so here we have this sewed on. And so what I'm going to do now is just take it over to the ironing board and I'm going to iron it so there's no little pleats right here, and we'll get our next strip. Okay, so I'll be right back. Now that we have the first 2 strips started, we just need to decide which way we're going to go. And I'm going to be adding onto this side. That way there's less fabric that will be underneath the throat of my machine. So I get to choose my next fabric piece, and I think since we have red there, we'll go with, well, no, I don't think I want that one. We're going to go with this one, this ornament one. This is pretty. And so now I do not have to have this matched up at the top. In fact, I am just going to match the edge of the selvage where it starts with the fabric right here. Right here. I just want to make sure that that goes at least to the edge. Again, this is going to have a binding on it, so if it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're going to save fabric because when this flips over, it's a lot shorter. So we are just going to slide it down, make sure our fabric at least is on the edge of that towel. Now you can pin this back in place if you want, and it's a good idea probably because of your towel underneath there. But if you're really sure of yourself, you can just take it over and just be really careful not to get any pleats in it. I am going to put a couple of pins, not that many, just enough. And if I find that as I go I need to reposition my fabric, I can. But just 3 or 4 pins is all I need. right there. Okay, so I'm going to sew this. Okay, so right here, I'm noticing it's a little tight, so I can just pull this pin out, just make sure everything else is good. Keep it overlapped. And I do a back stitch at the end, that way it secures it. Now, if you're starting at the very edge like we did a while ago, your tails down here are going to get longer and longer, and that's good because we're going to try to use these when we get to these shorter pieces at the corner. So let me give this a press. What we're going to do is we're going to open this just like this, and we're going to press it out just like that. Okay, I've pressed it going that way. Next piece, and I'm going to go with a light piece. I kind of like to have a pretty distinct difference between each strip. So again, I just need to make sure that I cover the fabric up to there, and this is where my selvage starts, right here, and pin this piece on. And then I go back to sewing. Okay, and I'll press, and our pieces down here are getting longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, I think, one, maybe two more on this side, and then we're going to see if some of our tails will be the right size. Actually, we're going to save these tails for this other side, and we're going to use the tails from this side over on this side. That way we get our fabric spread out nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and do at least one, maybe two more, and then we're going to start doing it on this side over here. So let me get this pressed, and don't run over your needles like I did. It could cause your needle to break or mess up your machine. Okay, so here's what we have so far. We've got, looks like 6 strips on this side. And so as you can see, this is getting quite a bit shorter. And so before too long, our scraps will be able to go on those corners. But what I want to do is I want to go ahead and get started on this side and start adding pieces here. So I'm going to start with this one here. And this time, actually, since we're starting over there, I need to turn this upside down. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the excess over here. So I'm going to turn this over. Just like this. And I'm going to go ahead and with a straight edge, just right there on that line, cut those strips off. That way I won't have to mess with them. And we can leave these over here. They're not very long. But let's take a look and see if these strips are getting to be long enough for these corners. So from the center, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips, and my longest tail would be this one, and I'm going to put it so that this corner right here goes here. I think this one will work. So of course I don't want to use this one here because it's the same fabric, but I can use this one on the other side. So what we want to do then, that just tells us that we only need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 full strips per side, and then we can use the leftovers. So I've got 1 full strip left. So I have 1, this one, and so I need 3 more strips. So I can decide what 3 I want. We are ready for this strip to be sewn on, but since we are going to be sewing to this side, I need to turn this and start up on this corner. So that will go right there, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and sew the rest of these full length strips because we know how to do that now. And I'll bring you back when we're ready to fit the tails to the corners. All right, so we've got both sides with 5 strips. So here's what I just added right here. Let's see if I can back you up a little bit. There you go. Okay, so here's what we have. So let's see. Now I want to flip it over, and we need to get these tails off. Now, it is going to be really close with the strips being the right length. If you want to use your fabric, string that went through there. There we go. If you want to use your fabric in a very frugal way, remember when you start to always just butt right up to this edge and the selvage. That way you're not using excess fabric at the top, because when this flips over, you're going to have excess because it slants this way. So use every bit of your fabric because it's just about perfect, the amount of fabric we have on a strip to be able to use it in 2 places on this towel. So let's go ahead and lay these out. And when we cut them, we also want to cut so that we get the most fabric in our tails that we can. Got some strings hanging around. And right up next to the white. Now, there's nothing that says you can't cut through the white. It's the toweling. If you do, that's fine. You're going to be putting a binding around it, so that's fine. If you've ever done any string quilting, this is very similar to that. You're just using a piece of foundation, which is our towel, to sew strips on, so you're quilting as you go. Now, if you were wanting to actually make this into a quilt with batting, you'd have to put batting between the fabric and the kitchen towel. But we don't want that thickness. We like it just this way. All right, so now I'm going to put this one here so we can see both of them. and figure out how we're going to use these tail pieces to finish off our corners. Okay, so we can kind of see the colors here. So I'm going to pick out my longest ones, and some of these are still sewn together just a little bit because I ran off the edge. And I'm just going to cut them as close as I can. Okay, so here is one of our longest ones. We should have 2 of each sizes. Well, actually, we're going to have a little bit different. And that's because this is a rectangle. That's right. It will be just a little different. And we have a ladybug. Okay, so here are the pieces we have left. Our 2 longest ones are right here. So we know we don't want to use this one over here, so it's going to have to go over here. And so that means, which one of these is the longest? This green one is going to go here. Then I've got 2 of these blues, but I think I'm only going to use one of them. Which one's the longest? This one, so I think I'll do a blue one there. I think I will do, actually this one's longer, so we're going to put this one here, this one here, and then I've got these 3 left. So I'm going to get these 2 on and these 2 on, and we're going to see what we have left of these corners. So I'll bring you right back. I'm going to bring you back real quick before I sew this on. When you place these on here, a lot of times one of them you think, oh, it's not going to work, it's not quite long enough, or it's just about too short. What you need to do is you need to take the corner or the end that has that point, and that is going to be the piece that is touching the fabric. So this has to be going next to the fabric, and it's going to follow the angle of your piece down here. So if I have that here, it'll look like it's too short when you fold it, but it's actually going to be just fine. Then I will have plenty of room up here. So let me go ahead and flip that over. And that's how I will sew that. So use that peak, that point to your advantage. All right, I have this little piece of fabric sticking out still, and this piece right here. So here are the pieces that I have left. This is a little bit bigger, so I think this piece right here should go here. And let's see if this one will fit. And that one can go there. And then this light one can come over here. And this one can come over here. And then we'll see if we have a little bit of fabric sticking out or not. So I'll add these 2 and those 2 to the rest of our towel, and I'll be right back. All right, so now I've got both ends, and on this side I have this much fabric. And on this side, I have just a teeny piece right there. Now, it is going to get, you know, we're going to have a binding on it, but let's cover it all the way. I happen to have 2 scraps that were tails that we took off, and these are the 2, and they're going to be just perfect. So this one I will put here, and this one I will put there, and I'll bring you back when I get them on. Okay, well, I just looked at my camera and I forgot to turn the video play button on for this last part, which is no big deal because it wasn't anything big. But I had just finished sewing on those ends, and I trimmed the quilt down, or actually I should say the towel down. And so I just turned it over. I laid my straight edge and cut. And if you cut some of the toweling, that's perfect. That's fine. Sometimes I would cut some of the toweling, and the toweling isn't always straight, and so we just want the edges to be straight so it'll look nice. And then here, of course, are all my scraps that came off, and now it is ready for binding. I was also going to show you the back of the towel, and if you've done it correctly, you won't have any pleats, and if you've got some pleats, no big deal, no one's going to see them. It just comes with a little experience as far as just making sure your fabric is always flat as you're sewing those seams, but it looks pretty good. You can see that the colors and the pieces are, no 2 are touching. If they were, it wouldn't be the end of the world. No one's going to look close enough to notice that, but I tried to get it kind of spread out between the lights and the darks and the different colors, and I think it turned out pretty good. Now this whole piece right here, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It had 10 whole strips all together. So if you have 10 strips length of fabric that are 2.5 inches wide, and you're really careful not to waste your fabric when you're sewing it on, you can do this whole towel and have very little waste. This is just the corners. Most of it is selvages, but you saw that I used every little piece of the strip sewing it on. So now I've got to figure out how to finish the edges. So on my last one, I used a binding, and I just machine sewed the binding on, and I like that. I just took scrap pieces and did a scrappy binding on this one, and it finishes it up really nicely. I don't remember what my sister did. I wasn't, I guess, looking or paying attention when I was noticing it, but I know that there's different ways of finishing the edges. You could fold this once and then twice, just roll it twice, and then stitch it close to this edge, and you'd have a finished edge without a border. It would just be all finished like that. If you have a serger, you could just finish the edges off with a serger. It wouldn't be very fancy or anything, but it would do the job. I'm going to use the binding again, and I don't think I'm going to use one of these fabrics. I think I'm going to look for a solid that would coordinate. So I'm going to have to go through some of my stash and see which one I think would look the best. When I made this one here, I did 2¼ inch width, and it's pretty loose. There's open space in there. I think I could do easily 2 inches, and that would be fine. I could probably even do smaller, but I do want it to show up a little bit on there. And this wasn't a bad width at all as far as the way it looks. But I think I can just get away with 2 inches as far as the width of my binding. And this is, let's measure this and see how long it is. This is 24 inches, okay. So 24 plus just a little over 7. We're looking at 31 by 24, 3. So 31 by 27. I can put that into a binding calculator. That they have free ones on the internet. Just type in or Google binding calculator and it'll pop up, and you just put the width, the length of your quilt, and then also put the width of your binding that you're using, and it will figure out how many strips to cut from whatever length of fabric you have. And this is probably 42, 43, something like that. So I'm going to do that and find out how much I need. I will get that cut, and then I'll bring you back when I've got it. So now we've got to take our binding and we need to sew it together so that it's in a straight line. I'm doing 3 strips, and hopefully that's enough. We'll see. So I'm just going to line up, and this is just my selvage hanging out here and my selvage hanging out here. Normally you can cut that off and then just line them up perfect. That's fine. I'm just going to sew straight across right there. You can think of this as the capital A. And when you do a capital A, you need to go across for that middle line. Well, that means you just go across here. Another direction you might think to do would be this. If you did this, it would not be a straight line when you opened up your piece. It would be something like that. And that wouldn't work. So if we go here to here, when you open it up, you are going to have a nice straight piece of binding. So sometimes that gets people a little confused, and I've just learned that if I think of it as a capital A and we just draw the line across like that, it helps me remember. So I'm just going to take this to my sewing machine and sew from here to here. You can draw a line. I don't need to. I usually eyeball it, and I also have some seam tape on the base of my sewing machine there that I can follow too. But I'm just going to do this one, and then I'm going to add this piece to the end, and then I'm going to press it in half, and I'll bring you back. My binding is made. Let me find my seam here. I stitched across those peaks, then I just trimmed off to 1/4 of an inch, and they laid nice and straight. I folded my strips in half lengthwise and just pressed them, and now I am ready to put this on this towel. Now, if you haven't done machine binding or bound a quilt before, I do have a much clearer, more in-depth video on my leaf quilt tutorial that you can go and find it there. And I think it's a lot easier to follow than here. I'm just going to just real roughly and real quickly show you how I do this. So since I am machine quilting this and not hand stitching it down, what I am going to do is I'm going to attach this to the back. And so with the opening portion of my binding, I'm going to put it on the edge of my towel here, and I'm going to start sewing. Pull this down a little bit. I'm going to start sewing right here, and this is just going to hang loose. I am going to go down. I'm going to miter my corners. So down and just go all the way around. So if you need to see a more detailed description of how to put binding on, go to that leaf quilt tutorial and I show you step by step how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and do this one. I'll bring it back when I have it attached to the back, and I'll show you, or I'll get you started on how we pull it to the front and start binding the towel with it. The binding is all sewn or attached to the quilt. It's not completely sewn on. I've got a few strings here. I'll get those later. So when I finished sewing it, it was like this. I pressed it open so I didn't have any pleats or tucks anywhere in here. And it's all pressed open like that. Now we're going to flip it around. And we are just going to pull this over and just need to cover up the seam that I made right here and just stitch right on top of that seam right next to the edge of this fabric, and it should sew just fine. And here it is. It is all finished, and you can see it's got a few threads here still. You can see that the binding looks really good with the fabric, so I think that worked out well. Again, I don't think any of them would have looked bad, but the red does look nice. Let me see here. Let me just show you. So if you'll see, I just stitched right next to that edge, and then on the back I had white thread and it just stayed on the toweling. So that's how that looks. Then I also wanted to show you, this is a great thing to use decorative stitches on. And I did some decorative stitch right here. I had the white underneath and the red on top. You can see a little bit of the white popping through, but it's not noticeable. And then underneath here, you can just see just a little bit. Whoops, and I got a thread right there. Just a little bit, but not bad at all. But that would be a fun thing to do, is to put a few decorative stitches on a couple of different rows, or all of them if you wanted to. You probably would want to do it before you got the binding on, but you can definitely do it after. But if you did it before, you can just go off the edge with the binding on. You have to stop and just make sure that you don't go onto your binding. So it turned out real cute, and you could use different colored threads or whatever. You know, if you wanted to do a gold accent thread, you know, something sparkly, that would be pretty. You could do whatever you wanted with this. This is a great idea. And I was thinking as I was making it that, you know, it's a nice lightweight. You could easily do a baby blanket with this, and like for summertime, you know, something to put over the baby thing, or, you know, just use some infant fabrics. Fun. But great idea, and my sister Kathy is the one to thank for this pattern, and I think she might have had some decorative stitches on hers, if I'm recalling correctly. So she's the one that came up with this idea, and I think it's a really cute idea, and I'm just sorry that she wouldn't come on and share it with you. She would know exactly how she made it, but I think this worked out just fine. So I hope you like this tutorial. If you did, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. Also, liking and sharing is much appreciated. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment box below, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.